It's week 2 of the preseason. The Cleveland Browns are suiting up for a brutal test against the Philadelphia Eagles' first-string defense. The energy in the building is tense. Edge of your seat tense. Everyone's watching. And more specifically, everyone's watching one man, Shedeur Sanders. Because for the first time, the rookie is getting the start. And somewhere deep in the bowels of the stadium, tucked behind the cameras, the buzz, the bright lights, Dillon Gabriel is fuming. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He wasn't supposed to be the footnote to someone else's fairy tale. He wasn't supposed to be the guy left off the depth chart graphic. He wasn't supposed to be watching a franchise tilt towards someone who was, on paper, a fifth-round developmental pick. But that's exactly what's happening. And the thing that makes it so unbearable, Shedeur didn't steal anything. He didn't politic. He didn't whisper in the right ears. He didn't shake the table behind the scenes. He just played better. Period. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. While Gabriel spent the offseason fighting narratives, chasing respect, and talking his way into relevance, Shedeur stayed in the pocket, both metaphorically and literally, poised, quiet, and calculated. And now, he's under center, lined up against one of the best offensive lines in the league. And instead of folding, he's cooking. First drive, crisp slant to the slot receiver. Second play, read option for a gain of 12. Then a deep ball, perfect spiral, dropped into the bucket, touchdown. The Eagles bench looks confused. The commentators are stunned. And Gabriel, he's watching his nightmare unfold in real time. This wasn't just a game. It was an unraveling. Shedeur wasn't supposed to look this comfortable. He wasn't supposed to command the huddle like a vet. He wasn't supposed to take the pressure, the noise, the expectations, and turn it into rhythm. But he did. And what made it worse? He made it look easy. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel, once a high-profile college name, once penciled in as a Brown future option, now looked like yesterday's plan. The guy whose ceiling had collapsed before his floor was ever finished. He was nowhere near the field, not in warm-ups, not on the sidelines with a clipboard, not in the headset rotation. He was on ice. The message was clear. Shedeur wasn't being evaluated anymore. He was being built around. And for Gabriel, that realization hit like a blindside sack, because for months he had been holding on to hope that this was temporary, that Shedeur's rise was just a blip, that the staff would come to their senses, that he was still the chosen one. But when your replacement is outperforming you in real time in front of a stadium packed with scouts, analysts, and reporters, that illusion dies fast. And here's the kicker. Shedeur's success wasn't loud. He didn't celebrate like a rookie desperate to prove he belonged. He didn't bark at defenders. He didn't even crack a full smile after the touchdown. He just jogged to the sideline, dapped up his offensive line, put on the headset, and got back to work. That is what made it worse for Gabriel, because Shedeur didn't just take his job. He did it better, quieter, smarter, more efficiently. That's when regret starts to eat at you. Gabriel had spent so much time worried about perception, his image, his treatment, his rightful place, that he forgot the most brutal truth of the NFL. The league doesn't care who you were, only who you are now. And right now, Shedeur Sanders was that guy. Fans in the stadium were chanting his name by the third quarter. On Twitter, QB1 was trending with his face next to it. And on the sideline, coaches had already started rotating in second and third string receivers to see how Shedeur could elevate them. That's when you know. That's when the writing's on the wall. Gabriel sat there, seething, not just at Shedeur, but at himself. Because deep down, in that space where the truth lives, he knew he hadn't done enough. He'd tried to maintain control without earning it, tried to command a locker room without commanding the offense, tried to lead without proving why. And the moment Shedeur got a real shot, it was over. This wasn't about favoritism. This wasn't some manufactured media narrative. This was performance on the field, in the huddle, in the press conferences, and even in the locker room confrontations. Shedeur had outplayed him, outlet him, outlasted him, and the franchise noticed. So did the players. So did the fans. Even the opposing team started to take notice. By the second quarter, Eagles defenders were treating Shedeur like a starting quarterback, not a rookie. They disguised coverages, sent complex blitz packages, and every time he adjusted, calmly, precisely, like he'd been doing it for years. By halftime, the numbers spoke for themselves. 14 of 18, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. Passer rating, 129.1. Poise rating, off the charts. But it wasn't about stats. It was about presence. Gabriel, who once prided himself on his ability to rally a team, now watched as his team leaned into someone else. As offensive linemen tapped Shedeur on the helmet after every play, as running backs gave him the kind of nod that says, "You've got it, man," he was witnessing the full transfer of trust, one that couldn't be undone. And maybe the worst part? Shedeur never once looked at him, not in warm-ups, not after a touchdown. Not once did he gloat. He didn't throw shade. He didn't mouth off, because this wasn't personal. It was just football. Shedeur wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. He was just doing his job, better than expected, quieter than most, and cleaner than almost anyone had seen from a rookie in years. That's what made it unbearable, because for all the drama that had unfolded in the past weeks, the locker room argument, the viral clip, the questions, the headlines, this moment was simple. Sanders delivered. Gabriel didn't. And in a league as ruthless as the NFL, that's the end of the story. You either capitalize on your moment, or someone else writes your final chapter. And tonight, Shedeur Sanders had the pen in his hand. By the time the Brown starters hit the tunnel at the end of the night, there wasn't a single person in the building still wondering who the quarterback of the future was. There was no more debate, no more evaluation. It was Shedeur, period. He'd shown it on the field. He'd shown it in the locker room. And now, he was showing it to the one thing that silences every critic, every doubter, every preseason depth chart guess. Consistency, not just a good drive, not a lucky throw. Game after game, practice after practice, the kid was delivering. And Dillon Gabriel? He wasn't just being left behind. He was unraveling. It started small, missed meetings, a quiet absence from team activities, avoiding the media scrum. The kind of things that don't raise immediate alarms, but slowly build a picture, one of isolation, disconnection. A man who once thought he was on a rise, now falling without a parachute. Inside the facility, people noticed quarterback's coach barely speaking to him. Teammates, respectful but distant. Gabriel could feel it. He could feel the air thinning around him, the sideline glances, the tension in the meeting rooms. No one had to say it out loud. He was done, and not because of some scandal or injury or drama. No, the reason was much simpler and somehow more devastating. He just wasn't good enough. That's the part no one prepares you for in the NFL. Not the hits, not the schemes. But the moment you realize talent has a shelf life, and yours just expired. Because when someone like Shedeur Sanders walks in, does everything right, and turns your years of effort into background noise in weeks, it stings. Deep. It forces you to ask questions you never thought you'd face. Was I ever actually the guy? Or was I just holding a spot until someone real showed up? For Gabriel, those questions started burning through him fast. He'd spent most of his career being the next guy up. A well-liked recruit, a promising transfer, a name that always sounded good in theory. But the NFL doesn't pay for theory. It pays for results. And Shedeur was results. Meanwhile, the Browns' front office was pivoting faster than anyone expected. Privately, they were already discussing brand positioning around Shedeur, not in a flashy, overhyped way, but as a soft rollout of the franchise's future. More interviews, more FaceTime with fans, coordinated social campaigns around QB5. They weren't just investing in a player. They were building a legacy. Because for the first time in decades, they had a quarterback who didn't flinch, didn't fold, and didn't fake it. Shedeur wasn't just surviving the pressure. He was shaping it to his advantage. Think about that. Most rookies are crushed by the weight of expectation. The moment gets too big. The cameras, the media, the expectations, they eat you alive if you're not built for it. But Shedeur, he walks through fire like it's a light jog. He doesn't get rattled. He doesn't snap back. He absorbs the noise, filters out the garbage, and delivers only what matters. You want leadership? He gives you poise. You want maturity? He gives you restraint. You want confidence? He gives you wins. And in a city like Cleveland, where hope has been fragile and fleeting for years, that means something. So while Gabriel sulked through walk-throughs and ghosted team dinners, Shedeur was busy doing what real leaders do, building relationships, working with the second-team O-line, talking film with backup receivers, asking questions, staying after practice, not because the cameras were rolling, but because that's who he is. Every action was a brick, and with every rep, he was building something that couldn't be knocked down by bad press, jealous teammates, or even skeptical owners. The building, that was trust, and he had it, from the locker room to the front office, from the trainers to the traveling staff. Trust travels fast when it's earned honestly. Meanwhile, Gabriel's world was shrinking. One day after the Eagles game, a local reporter published a piece titled "The Fall of Gabriel," how Shedeur took the franchise. It wasn't scathing. It wasn't even particularly cruel. But it was thorough, and that's what made it hit so hard. Because it was all there. The stats, the comparisons, the lack of growth, the body language, the missed windows, the time he showed up late to film study and blamed it on traffic. And then the quote, an anonymous source from inside the building. Gabriel talks like a starter, but he never plays like one. That was it. The obituary. After that, it was over. Teams around the league took notice. Some began calling the Browns quietly, checking Gabriel's status, floating the idea of a practice squad deal or a preseason trade. But even that buzz was soft, reserved, like they already knew they'd be picking up a guy who was more brand than ball. And Shedeur, he didn't blink. He kept preparing like he was still QB3, still hunting for a spot, still trying to convince people. That's the scary part. He's already won, and he's still working like he hasn't. By the time the Browns broke camp, the quarterback room had a new structure. QB1, Sanders. QB2, veteran placeholder. Gabriel, gone. No hard feelings. No farewell video. Just a quiet line on the transaction wire that read waved. And you know what? That was the most fitting end possible. Because when it came down to it, Gabriel didn't lose a battle for QB1 because of one bad practice, or one weak performance, or one viral video. He lost it because he never understood the assignment. He thought it was about maintaining control. Shedeur knew it was about earning it. Gabriel tried to protect his image. Shedeur protected the team. Gabriel wanted to be seen. Shedeur wanted to be respected. And in the NFL, that is what gets remembered. So now, as Shedeur leads the Browns into the regular season, the past doesn't matter. The doubts don't matter. The old headlines don't matter. All that matters is what he's building now. And the foundation? It's solid, built on composure, earned through pressure, and made to last. Because Shedeur Sanders didn't just take the job. He became it. And that's something no one, not a former starter, not a bitter critic, not even a cautious coach, can take away from him. As week one of the regular season approached, the Browns facility no longer felt like a team searching for its quarterback. The feeling was different now, more focused, less fractured. You could see it in the way the offense moved in practice, smoother, tighter, in the way coaches huddled around film with more intention. Even the locker room music hit differently. And the reason for that shift was walking into the building before sunrise, still in his slides, already memorizing red zone tendencies for the fences they hadn't even scheduled yet. Shedeur Sanders wasn't preparing like a rookie. He was preparing like a problem. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel, he wasn't even in the building. The release had come quietly. No press conference. No emotional Instagram post. Just a polite best of luck in your future endeavors text chain, and then gone. Another quarterback in a long line of Cleveland's almost guys. But what really shook people wasn't the fact that he was cut. It was how quickly he became irrelevant. NFL teams don't mourn depth chart casualties. The machine moves too fast. And for all of Gabriel's early promise, he had become a case study in what happens when projection doesn't meet performance. Because here's the brutal truth of professional football. This league doesn't owe you development. If someone else does your job better, they're going to get it. End of story. And that's what had happened. Shedeur hadn't just matched expectations. He'd shattered them. In every measurable and immeasurable category. Throw velocity, film room discipline, huddle presence, crisis control. Everything. But what made it almost unfair was how emotionally unbothered he seemed through it all. This was a kid whose every move was scrutinized, dissected, mocked online by people who'd never worn pads. And yet, nothing fazed him. When the media pressed him about the starting role, he didn't take the bait. I'm just showing up to do my job. The rest is up to the coaches. When asked about Gabriel's release, he's a talented guy. I learned a lot from sharing the room with him. Polished, purposeful, unshakable. But behind the scenes, the team knew the real deal. They'd seen Shedeur lead post-practice film sessions with the entire second unit, treating scout team players like starters. They'd seen him checking protections with the third-string center, making sure nobody got embarrassed on film. They watched him walk through 2-minute drills with clock precision, never once forgetting situation, personnel, or down. That's not raw talent. That's quarterback DNA. And it was starting to infect the rest of the roster in the best way possible. Veterans weren't rolling their eyes anymore. They were locked in. Coaches stopped hedging. Players on both sides of the ball were starting to speak about Shedeur not as the young guy, but as the guy. And still, no one said it louder than the game tape. Week 1, Browns versus Bengals. Home game, divisional rivalry. The air thick with expectation and dread. You could feel it in the tunnel before kickoff. This wasn't a scrimmage. This was a league. And Shedeur? Calm as always. Snap 1. Play action. Calm drop. Hits the tight end on a leak route for 15 yards. Boom. First down. 2 plays later. Under pressure, pocket collapsing. He sidesteps the blitz, resets his feet, and drops a dime down the sideline to a streaking receiver. By the end of the drive, Cleveland is up 7-0, and the stadium is already chanting his name. And on the sideline, you can see it. The eyes of teammates locked on him like he's a 10-year vet. Because that's what happens when you perform when it matters. You become more than just a quarterback. You become the belief engine for the entire team. Every time he made a smart check at the line, the defense stood taller. Every time he called timeout, instead of forcing a broken play, the coaching staff exhaled. Every time he took a hit, popped up, and jogged back to the huddle without theatrics, the city fell deeper in love. Shedeur wasn't trying to save the franchise. He was just doing what they needed all along. Stability, vision, grit, execution. And not once did he look over his shoulder. Not for Gabriel. Not for anyone. Because when you operate with clarity and discipline, you don't need to chase validation. It finds you. As for Gabriel, he watched the game from a hotel room, alone, phone on silent, notifications off, agents calling. No one with answers he liked. He'd been replaced not just by a better quarterback, but by a better man for the job. And that's the part people don't talk about enough in sports. Sometimes it's not about who's more talented. It's about who can handle the weight of the moment, who can take 53 grown men and make them believe. And Gabriel? He never had that. He thought this league was about being loud, being visible, showing alpha energy. But Shedeur showed everyone that real power is quiet. It's in how you prepare, how you respond, how you lead when no one's watching. That's what won him the job. Not politics, not hype, not draft pedigree. Consistency, accountability, composure. By the fourth quarter, the Browns were up by 2 touchdowns. And Shedeur was still sharp, still coaching up teammates, still asking questions on the sideline, still demanding excellence. The franchise had seen enough. This wasn't a spark. It was a signal that maybe just maybe, the Cleveland Browns had found what they've spent 2 decades chasing. A quarterback who wasn't just playing the league. He was built to lead it, and not because of luck, not because of flash, because when the moment came, he earned it, and no one was taking it away. After that opening game performance, Cleveland wasn't just buzzing, it was believing, in a way it hadn't in years. Because for the first time since maybe ever, the Browns didn't just win, they controlled the game. From kickoff to final whistle, they played like a team that knew exactly who they were, not chasing a miracle, not clawing out of an identity crisis, just playing football, clean and composed. And Shedeur, he was a gravity holding it all together. Post-game, he didn't scream. He didn't pose. No, I told you so energy. Just a handshake with Joe Burrow, a head nod to the defensive coordinator, and a walk back to the locker room like he'd done this 1,000 times. And maybe that's the thing. He hadn't done it 1,000 times, but he prepared like he had. That's what people started realizing. This wasn't rookie magic. This wasn't a one-week wonder. This was a result of reps, of obsession, of clarity. Inside the Browns facility, the shift was rapid. Playbooks were being subtly restructured around Shedeur's strengths. The play calling became faster. The formations more versatile. Offensive linemen were staying after practice, voluntarily, because they wanted to sync their timing with him. You don't get that kind of buy-in unless you've earned the room. And Shedeur had. Completely. Coaches who used to use phrases like, "We'll see how it plays out," were now talking in absolutes. Wide receivers were publicly praising his vision and accuracy. Defensive backs, guys with zero reason to hype a quarterback, were calling him the most locked-in player on the field. By week 3, national media had caught up. The stories started hitting fast. Rookie QB Shedeur Sanders is Cleveland's best decision in 20 years. The Browns finally have a franchise quarterback, and he was a 5th-round pick. Move over hype. Shedeur is doing it quietly and ruthlessly, and all the while, no one could find Dillon Gabriel. He'd gone dark. No interviews. No sightings at training facilities. Just a whisper on the NFL transaction wire as he floated around looking for a practice squad spot. But no team wanted to bring in a guy whose final act in Cleveland had been a locker room meltdown followed by complete implosion. His name became shorthand for missed opportunity. His story became cautionary. And his silence? That became the loudest statement of all. Because if Gabriel had anything left to say, any fire still burning, any intent to prove people wrong, he would have found a mic, or a podcast, or a camera, or something. But he didn't. Because somewhere deep down, he knew what everyone else knew now. Shedeur wasn't just playing well. He had erased the competition. The gap between them wasn't athleticism. It wasn't footwork. It wasn't even leadership. It was clarity of purpose. Gabriel had tried to look like a franchise quarterback. Shedeur? He simply was one. And that difference played out in every throw, every interview, every quiet moment on the sideline when things got tough. And Shedeur never blinked. The Browns front office knew it. 2. Andrew Berry, the GM, who had taken a risk on drafting Sanders in the 5th round despite raised eyebrows from scouts and analytics guys, was now walking to the building with quiet vindication in his step. He'd seen something the others hadn't. Not just tape, not just numbers, intangibles. The kind of things you can't measure in drills. The kind of things that come out when it's 3rd and 8 with 80,000 screaming fans and an elite pass rush bearing down on you. And your quarterback calmly delivers a strike across the middle like it's just a Wednesday rep. That's what Shedeur brought. Control, calm, command. Not once had he looked wide-eyed. Not once had the stage been too big. And so, the Browns did what every smart franchise eventually does when they realize they have the guy. And that is what made him the most dangerous kind of leader. One who doesn't need the spotlight, because the light finds him anyway.